Thank you. I'm Noah Ratson. I'm a student here at the Austin Center for Design. And today I want to welcome you on behalf of all the students and want to start off making a confession. I am not from Austin. And I want you to raise your hand if you're also not born in Austin. Wow. So what is it about this place which is so magical? For me, it was the Austin Center for Design that eventually brought me here. But this place is a hub of creativity. It is a place where people come for opportunity to make businesses, to make art, to make music, to create friendships and communities. It's so special. One person who we spoke with said this: "I've never lived in a city like this." And she's traveled all around the world, lived in places in Europe, in the US. She said, "I've never lived in a city like this. It's nurturing, it embraces you." There's something so special about this city, and that specialness has caused a lot of people to come here. So much so that Austin has grown almost 5 times as much as the national average. Over the last 5 years, according to the US Census Bureau, Austin was the fastest growing metropolitan area of its size 4 of those years. And with this growth, as we all know, comes growing pains. Increased traffic, property taxes and values, and these growing pains, they do potentially threaten what makes Austin so special. And that's where Imagine Austin came in. Imagine Austin is an initiative that was created and adopted in 2012 by the City Council of Austin. And it was formed by input from 25,000 Austinites to create a vision that would shape Austin's future and preserve what is special. Here is an excerpt that I think summarizes it well. "Austin is a beacon of sustainability, social equity, and economic opportunity, where diversity and creativity are celebrated, where community needs and values are recognized, where leadership comes from its citizens, and where the necessities of life are affordable and accessible to all." This is a beautiful vision of what Austin should be and how to maintain what's special. But one of the biggest problems here is of equity, social equity. How can leadership come from all of its citizens? How can people who make a lower income have a voice and needs that are weighed the same as their higher income neighbors? How can a diversity of voices be heard and celebrated no matter how much education, power, or money they have? How can there be better social equity in this city? So what is equity? It's not the same as equality. So this is a picture of equality. We give everyone the same stool, and those who are tall enough can pick the apple. If we have equity, it's recognizing that people have different needs. If they are going to have similar contributions, participation, and benefits, we need to provide people with the means to participate in a similar way. That means providing them with something different, a taller stool for some. So how can we support people to have equitable power and opportunity in their lives, their community, and in this city? This is a complex problem, how to create this quality of life for all. And there's no one single cause, there's no single solution. So how are we going to create the solution? Well, it's not going to be top down. Just as Imagine Austin was formed through the participation of individuals, communities, and government to create that vision, it's going to take all of us to have equitable participation in creating, caring for our greater social fabric. And this is what civic engagement is. This type of engagement is where individuals, communities, and government are working together to care for that greater social fabric. It's as defined here in the American Democracy Project, promoting the quality of life in a community through both political and non-political processes. It's not just about going to town council. It's not just about voting. It's about volunteering. It's about taking care of our neighborhoods and our communities. So the question really is, how can we improve equitable civic engagement in Austin? This is the question that drove our research. This is why we partnered with the City of Austin to look into this social challenge for this year's AC4D class. Now, we identified gaps and opportunities that relate to this question and through our design research, and a little bit about our design research. Austin Center for Design is a school where we're learning about creative problem solving using these design methods to tackle societal challenges. And civic engagement, equitable civic engagement, is just one of those challenges. So here today, we're sharing with you the outputs of our research. And moving forward, we are going to use that design research to inform the design of products and services that could help solve this problem. We focused our research in East Austin. Why? Because it's a microcosm of Austin as a whole. It is one of those neighborhoods that has the rich cultural heritage that Imagine Austin wants to protect. It's home to Victory Grill, a place where B.B. King and Ella Fitzgerald played in the 1950s, and arguably this is why Austin is the live music capital of the world. It's also home to Downs Field, just a few blocks from here, where Satchel Paige and Jackie Robinson played a long time ago. And it's also home to traditionally lower income and politically disenfranchised communities. These are the communities that we aim to support in having more equitable civic engagement in Austin. Now, we spoke to 52 individuals and had in-depth interviews with these individuals, and they represented 40 residents of Austin and East Austin, and also 12 subject matter experts in the fields of government, urban planning, public policy, and the like. Now, through this research, we know that there are opportunities. There is a possibility to realize that better quality of life in Austin and better social equity. And from here, we're going to show you what some of those insights and opportunities are. Kaylee?
Thanks, Noah. Okay, so Imagine Austin is a really beautifully written document. It's quite long though. But one of the things that they say is that they aim to protect neighborhood character by providing opportunities for existing residents who are struggling with rising housing costs to continue to live in their existing neighborhoods. We spent time walking through these neighborhoods. And we went and knocked on some doors. And we came to this house. And to tell you the truth, I really did not want to go knock on the door of this house. But my colleague, Noah, was with me and he said, we should do it. So I followed him up to the door. And we knocked. We met this man. He said, hello, we are wanting to learn about this neighborhood. He said, the neighborhood? It's like hell in this neighborhood. So this is when I started to inch off the back of the porch a little bit. But we pushed a little further and said, can you tell us some more about that? And he ended up sitting down in the yard with us on some chairs for an hour and a half, and he told us about his life. And he said, when I first moved here, it was flourishing with life. He went on to tell about the house that he lives in now. He moved in whenever he was 9 years old. He's lived there for 56 years. His wife moved in with him when he was 19 years old, and they raised their family there. And he talked about his good friends, Ira and Nathan, how that they were just terrific people. So in order to understand this flip-flop that he made so quickly, we can learn a little bit about the history of Central East Austin. This is a map of something called the Koch and Fowler Master Plan. It was put into place in 1928. This area that's highlighted in orange is where they decided to put all the services for the African American population in order to encourage them to move to that part of the city, which they did. We can look here in 1980. This purple piece right here is the Black population, and it's quite a segregated community. The positive effects of that plan were that the people that lived there developed a really tight-knit community, and like Hancock said, it was flourishing with life. If we fast forward a little bit in time, 2010, you can see that there's much less purple there. And it might look like we have a more integrated, a more diverse community, but the truth is that this is a community in transition, and Austin is growing every single day. And the people that are moving in find that neighborhood to be highly desirable. It's really close to downtown, and it's a really cool neighborhood. So the influx of people has caused the home values to increase. And when we asked Hancock about this, he mentioned how his taxes have increased. He said that in the past 4 years, they have doubled. And he elaborated on that a little bit. He said, people send me letters every single day telling me how much taxes I owe. You might as well sell your house, they say. So his response to these people coming, sending him flyers, and knocking on his door, he said, I keep myself secluded. So now there is a pit bull that he keeps on his front porch. He has put up signs that say no trespassing and beware of dog. His home is very unwelcoming. He's not the only person that has done this to their home. We've seen other houses that have locks on their gates. You can walk around and keep your eye out for that and see if you notice it as well. But I wanted to know more about his experience, and we asked him about his neighbors. He said that Ira and Nathan had moved out, and that his new neighbors have lived next door for 2 years, but he doesn't even know their names. If my neighbors want to bring me something for Christmas or Thanksgiving, they stay by the fence. They won't come up here. What he's done is, from feeling harassed by people that want to buy his house, he has barricaded himself off from people that he could potentially build relationships with as well. He feels threatened by the changes that have happened in his neighborhood, and we've seen this feeling of threat manifest in other ways as well. There's a woman that we met named Kathy, and she also has a really neat history in Central East Austin. She was born in the house that she grew up in, and when you hear her talk about what life was like, her face just lights up and she says, oh my gosh, it was so wonderful. And she tells about her friends roaming around the neighborhood. And she pulled out these pictures and showed us, this is her on the same path that leads up to her house now. I love this that she said, I think when you grow up, they put in your mind that you have so much less because you are Black and on the East Side. But our lives were rich. Listening to her stories, you could tell that that was true. Now, Kathy's home was built in 1892. It's extremely old, and you might imagine that it requires some upkeep. She has her roof caving in on one side, and she applied for the program at the City of Austin because there's programs that can help homeowners with home repairs. It's not a very easy process for her. She said that there's a lot of documents that she has to gather. Here's just the last slide with some of the things that she needs to get her hands on. She said that she's applied for this program 3 times. I've gotten so far each time, and something has happened to deny it. There was one time where there was a bit of information that they weren't able to track down, and so they said, we're going to deny it for now. Another time, they said that her home required too many repairs, that they weren't able to work on her house. So while she's in the process of all of this, she gets a knock on her door one day. And it's someone from the code enforcement office at the City of Austin. And they say, we're here because you have been reported. We're told that you have an illegal duplex. Now, when the person was there, they saw, but we see that you don't have a duplex. However, her experience was something like this. The false anonymous tip came through, which triggered the code inspectors to come to her home. They saw that she didn't have the duplex, but while they were there, they found some new things to cite her for. She said, they told me, your roof needs to be fixed, your porch needs to be fixed, you have brush on the side, and you need to keep the back alley clear. And I was like, what? Kathy said, I wonder who else they're telling to do these things. As a result of that, from the new citations, she had to end up going to court. Her citations were upheld. She really did need to fix those things. So her options were that she could either pay to have it fixed, or she could reapply for some of those programs to get help in getting it fixed. While she's she's applying again, and she said that she has 3 more documents that she needs, and she's gonna hope that it goes through this time, and I cross my fingers for her as well. But she's getting these letters all the time as well from the code enforcement officers saying, warning of your citation, how are you getting this done? She is feeling harassed by this experience that she's having. And she said that someone at the court had told her, I think they mentioned your illegal duplex just to get you on the radar. She said, Kaylee, I just feel targeted. These days, I really do feel like they want me out. She said that I never know who's gonna knock on my door. It stresses me, and I shouldn't have to live like that. So we've seen how her sweet experience in the past has soured now. Jumping back into Hancock's story, he also had trouble with his roof. He has a really old house as well. And it had been leaking for years, so he said that I went down and I talked to the city, and they promised to put a roof on. They came out, and they did a couple of things. They did some painting, and they did some caulking, but they never got to his roof. They told him that they ran out of money. So what he had to do was he went and took a mortgage out on his home, and he paid for someone to fix his roof. The problem with him doing that is that he got behind on his taxes. He said there are two ways to skin a cat. If they don't get us out with the taxes, they will do it with the code factor. In Hancock's story, he's moving out of East Austin this week. He's decided to sell his house because he thought it was the best option for him at this point. That was not an easy decision for him after living there for 56 years. Just like this house is me, Austin is me. And I'll have to heal whenever I leave. The structure and enablers of growth in Austin threaten long-term residents who are core to its culture. So how might we encourage growth in a way that doesn't threaten long-term residents? And how might we think about coordinating across programs so that we can account for the residents' different experiences across platforms? This is just one thing for us to think about today, and I'm going to pass it to Scott to talk to you about something else.
Hi, good morning. So what we've heard about Imagine Austin is that it's a bold vision for the city, the people that we want to be. And it recognizes boldly that we're not there yet. And so it's where we want to be. And it's interesting, during our research, we heard that government is a king sport. And the implication of it being a king sport is that it takes money and this traditional sense of power in order to influence government. And what we found when we went to City Council is that at first it seemed to affirm that impression in terms of the people that we saw on the day that we were there and the topics that were being discussed. And we also spoke with a resident named Barb. And Barb was, or she is, a lawyer by training, and she is very concerned about issues in her neighborhood of a property-rich district. And for Barb, at first it was difficult for her when she got involved with government because she had some anxiety, even with her being a lawyer. But she quickly came to understand the levers to pull, and it seemed to affirm this myth of a king sport in our mind. And then a few weeks later, we met a man that we call Diego. And Diego is a community organizer and an underemployed artist. He was raised by his grandparents who never spoke English. And Diego told us that in the beginning of his life, he really did not have a high regard for government. And he really was more interested in overthrowing government than he was in working with government. And he was a child of the 60s. So he was really concerned about things like the Vietnam War and wide world inequity. He wasn't concerned about things that were local. And so one day in the 1980s, there was a knock on his door. And it was from a representative from his neighborhood association who told him about a construction project that was happening in the neighborhood. And interestingly enough, this construction project was happening right across from his alley. And the first time that Diego gave his voice to Austin was when he signed a petition to limit the construction project. And that made Diego feel powerful because they were able to impact the construction so that it was a smaller building. So he was able to protect his family, and his family and his property, and he also saw the benefits of cooperation and collaboration with his neighbors. And so over time, he became more involved with his neighborhood and with his community and the government. And in time, he came to see government as part of the human condition. So it's the best and the worst of us. And what's important to underscore here is that he saw government as human, as people. And so this changed his perception of government dramatically. And so today, you'll find him collaborating and working at the same table as developers, City Hall, and members of the East Austin community on important issues like affordable housing. And so what we see with that is that for Diego to be able so actively involved in his community and impacting city government, that it really turns the concept of king sport on its head. So the perception that wealth determines influence discourages community and political action. And this led to an opportunity area for us. So how might we leverage the power of perception to increase meaningful civic participation? Now you might be thinking, reality perception, can it really be something so simple as that? Well, we also spoke with Ellen. Ellen is a retired Capital Metro driver and a grandmother. And her favorite city service is the library. She loves to read. Her favorite author is Daniel Steele, I used to read those too. And so she told us how she never gave voice to her opinion or her concerns until she became a grandmother. And she saw something that was directly affecting her and her grandchildren, and that was around safety and traffic enforcement at the school in her neighborhood. And she told us that something like this would never happen in other Austin communities. And she perceived those certain Austin communities as having this concentration of wealth and power, and that just would never happen there. So for her, she went to her neighborhood association to voice her concerns, and they told her to contact Austin 311, which for her felt like passing the buck, if you will, and she didn't understand that. And so without a handbook of how to navigate her association, how to interact with government services, she did what she thought was best, and really just randomly and by luck, she ran into her council representative, and she talked with him about her concerns. And he was very supportive and understanding, and told her that he would look into it and get back with her. Well, months later, nothing happened, and we don't know what did happen. You can imagine scenarios where the council person went back, gave it to the correct staff person, and it was given due process, and perhaps it was deemed a low priority because of other pressing issues, or perhaps something was done, but she didn't see the effects of it. And so that led to a feeling that no one seems to care about her or her issues. And it really became a self-fulfilling prophecy of, I don't feel my voice is being heard, and I don't feel like I know who to talk to. And so her decision has been to step back. So it's been over a year since this happened, and she's decided to exit in terms of engaging with her community and with government. And so this led us to the insight that people only feel heard by government when they see the exact result that they asked for. And an opportunity area is, how might we make participation easier and create a feedback loop so that people feel understood? So with something as important as civic engagement, and we think about reality and perception, is it important? Well, I think we saw, right, with one resident who was transformed because of his view of government. We saw another resident whose perception of government and community held her back. And so when we think about Imagine Austin and realizing the vision of it, perception is very important because it dictates how and if residents will participate. So with that, I'll pass it over to Mary Hannah.
So another group we spoke with was young adults in Austin, specifically young adults from 18 to 24 who are working and not enrolled in a four-year college or who didn't already have a college degree. And Imagine Austin addresses young adults. It says, Austin should have communities for Austinites of all ages, and it should provide environments to support young adults beginning their professional lives and their families. And we asked young adults, well, what do you think about Austin? And they actually said, oh, we think about Austin as a land of opportunity. This young lady, Scarlett, is a 21-year-old esthetician who moved here from a small town. And she said, you can be your own person here in Austin, and nobody cares. No one's going to bother you. She said, it's nice to be able to find myself and not have any judgment about doing so. And so she loves Austin. She loves going out to the music shows. She loves going out to art exhibits. She doesn't really participate in the civic life of Austin. In fact, she told us that she was kicking herself for not having voted in the 2016 election. But she's not alone there amongst her peers. If you look at registered voters in East Austin, 56% of all voters voted in the 2016 election, but only 36% of 18 to 24-year-olds. And we know this number would have been even more exaggerated if it were broken down by education level, because nationally, college graduates voted in the election at 69%, and adults with a high school diploma were only voting at a rate of 47%. And so they're very underrepresented in terms of these traditional ways of engaging with the government. And that's really a problem because they have a lot of things to say. This is Jim. And Jim's a 21-year-old cart pusher at HEB. And he really wants to become a music producer one day. And he keeps up with the news. He told us how he's really concerned about the repeal of net neutrality, amongst other issues. But when we asked him, well, what do you think, what could you do to affect change in your community? He told us, nothing. I'm just one individual. What can I do? And it's really important to be able to reach out to people like Jim because they're a part of this group of people. Since they have a high school education, they make on average $17,000 less per year than their college-educated peers. And so they're part of that group, like we heard about with the last speaker, who, because they come from a lower income background, had difficulty getting in touch with the city and making their views heard. And finally, this group is really important because it might sound trite, but they are our future. In doing this research, we spoke to artists, creatives, first-generation immigrants, people who are the first generation in their family to actually graduate from high school. They're going to be part of Austin's future, and they need to have a hand in shaping it. And so in order to understand what they had thought about civic participation, we actually asked them to do an activity in which we had them rank certain different methods of trying to create political change from those most likely to create change to those least likely to create change. And what we learned from their responses was that they actually had a number of different activities they thought would be pretty effective at creating change. But there were a large group of them that they had no interest in doing, like going to a government or political meeting, going to a protest or march, signing a petition, or talking to a representative in person. And when we asked them about this, they would go into detail about it. We said, well, why do you think going to a march would be so effective? And we asked this of Jim, who we heard from earlier, and Alejandro, whose best friend, who also works at HEB. And they said, well, if there's enough people, it will have an impact on society. And if it weren't for marches, we wouldn't have women's rights or civil rights for African Americans. And Alejandro piped in, my homeboy, MLK. So they were really excited about and knew a lot about how these techniques had actually brought about social revolutions in the past. And yet, the next thing Alejandro said to us was, I don't see myself doing any of this stuff. It's not what I'm into. So what is Alejandro into? What does he spend his time doing, if not engaging in traditional forms of civic participation? He told us, we're hard workers at work, but once we get home, we like to relax and play video games. I'm just like, dude, I worked a 12-hour shift. Let me rest. And this is something we've heard from most of our participants, especially in this bracket of people who are working young adults. They go to work, they come home, and then the next day they just repeat it all again. They're very isolated. In fact, Scarlett told us, I'm not part of any organizations or anything really. I have a small group of friends and I stick to that. I'm not a part of anything besides work. Now this social isolation is really important because as we've learned, people don't become civically engaged by themselves. They need to have someone invite them into that. Diego, who you heard about earlier, someone literally knocked on his door and said, hey, sign this petition, get involved in trying to protect your property value. But for this group of working young adults, A lot of the organizations that traditionally would have helped foster their relationship or their abilities to be able to participate in city life aren't there for them. They're less religious than their parents, and so they're not often part of religious organizations. They don't own homes. And their low-wage jobs, they're oftentimes not a part of professional organizations or unions. And finally, they're not in school. So all those traditional methods are cut off from them. They do still have family and friends and online communities that could teach them about how to become civically engaged. But because they come from disadvantaged backgrounds, their family and friends oftentimes don't have those skills to be able to pass on to the next generation. And so they get left out. They don't have that support to be able to become civically engaged. And in fact, we heard even from groups that their mission is to promote civic engagement. They're not going after this group. Joyce LeBombard, who is the vice president for voter registration at the League of Women Voters in Austin, told us, we haven't thought about how we could focus on the people that aren't going to college. So even though the League of Women Voters and organizations like it in Austin are doing a lot of great work to go to high schools and colleges in this area, they aren't thinking about what can we do to bring in people who aren't going to college. So it was things like this that led us to our insight that for working young adults, the old ways of connecting with city government are remote, but nothing has arisen to replace them. So as we go forward to address this problem, we'll be thinking about how might we create opportunities for young adults to contribute to civic life that are in tune with their evolving culture. I'm going to hand it off to Noah to wrap it up.
Thank you. So, in summary, out of all of this research have come these statements that we call insights, and they are meant to be provocative in driving the designs that we'll be moving forward with. So in summary, the structures and enablers of growth in Austin threaten long-term residents who are core to his culture, as we found in the stories of Hancock and Kathy. So how might we encourage growth in a way that doesn't threaten these long-term residents who all of us have dedicated ourselves to keeping in Austin? In the next case of Diego and Ellen, we've seen that the perception that wealth determines influence discourages community and political action and reinforces these inequities. So how might we leverage this power of perception to increase meaningful civic participation, especially for these communities that are generally politically disenfranchised? And we see that people become discouraged from participation when they don't see the outcomes of their efforts. So how might we make participation easier and create a feedback loop so that people do feel understood by government? And lastly, for young working adults like Jim and Alejandro, the old ways of connecting with city government are remote. They aren't familiar with that anymore. And nothing has arisen to replace them in their lives. So how might we create opportunities for these young adults to contribute to civic life in a tune with ways that are of their evolving culture? So our next steps as students here at the Austin Center for Design is to take these research insights and opportunity areas and to move forward in the next quarter with developing designs for products and services that can address some of these challenges. And of course, if any of you are community stakeholders who would like to partner in this, maybe provide seed money, whatever it might be, we would love to partner with you and have a conversation about that.